Welcome to Board Ghost, a story broadcast with games as the engine.
If living is a highway, then heaven is a bus stop. Been waiting for a minute there, or has it been forever?
We believe you're out there, hungry for stories for shared experiences. We can't see you, can't hear you, yet we will play for you. This night's offering is a continuation of our game of Downfall by Caroline Hobbs. To learn more about how we generate our story playing the game of Downfall, go check out our episode primer for Downfall. So our game so far, we have a world called Our Lands, which has individualism as the flaw in its heart. The elements are rain, hair, and shields. This is almost like a massive, gigantic, continent-sized, I don't know how big it is, a state-sized mangrove
Stateside.
that floats in the waters of an ever-raining world. And protecting it is this bioorganic shield canopy something.
Mm-hmm.
And some technology allows it to continue to stay afloat.
Yep.
And move around this world.
It just sort of floats at random.
And there's this Spanish moss that hangs down, and the inhabitants of this world, the Outlanders, gather resources from the ocean, flotsam and jetsam.
Treasures from the deep.
So the traditions that they follow are art traditions of the shakers, the artists, are also sometimes drug users who use the drug shake. And they plan, concept, and invent happenings that will either harm or help many people. Through their terrorism or altruism, they gain infamy or fame. And it's, the more they help, the more they hurt, the more
famous they
get. And that is the art of this world. That is what people react to and converse over. You also have a fashion statement in our traditions where everyone has elaborate haircuts and clothes, and they incorporate blasts of color and as much individual, highly recognizable stuff that they can scavenge and build from the things that they find in the sea and around them. And at birth, everyone is given a bracelet that may have a life preserver aspect to it, in that it sort of sustains them in this weird, wet environment. And they are given that at birth, and that's one of the first things that they learn to accent to make themselves and show up as a unique individual. We also have a hospitality tradition where when people visit one another, the guest and host exchange decorated locks of hair. The guest takes those decorated locks home from the host and decorates them more and perhaps gives them back again at some point to someone
Possibly.
else. And the hosts take the hair that they gather and they burn them in a container, and the pile of ashes shows how much hospitality that they are, how many people grace them with their presence. For entertainment, diving and scavenging is a necessity, and it's become a sport. So sort of general athletic water sports have become this Olympic pursuit. The pinnacle of this is to be given the bracer champagne, which is the very, very highly outfitted, shoots out some water, has some weapons,
Ancient
all
tech.
stuff, all kinds of stuff. It's a very advanced version of the bracer that only the fittest amongst all the fit is allowed to wield or is bestowed. And
Indeed.
we also have an economics tradition where every familial unit takes what they've scavenged and uses that as a currency. So everyone has this odd barter system where the stuff that they gather is given different ranks based on perhaps how high in the hierarchy of the family is, and all these different little aspects. And they had this huge exchange board where those rankings were maintained, where what piece of what doodad is worth what against another doodad.
And so how much the families are worth against each other.
In grief, our final tradition, right, is everyone's face is carved into the tree, and then upon death, that carving is brought up to the top of the shield, where it is put in what's called the rotting garden, which is a field atop of the shield of these pieces of bark that are just waterlogged faces that become swollen and eventually possibly rot away.
Perfect.
And that is Our Lands. So our characters, we have our hero Twig, who is an apprentice memorialist who carves faces into the tree. They take strong exception to the hospitality idea that you're giving these things to be destroyed, and things giving and taking of things without purpose and just for personal like acquisition. That's kind of the standard. And then they have a twin sister called Colleen Chantel Fantastique, who is an identical twin, who is an artist, a shaker, and who is a renowned hacker who seems to have
artist, hacker, inventor,
wants to make a splash. Whether it's altruistic or terroristic, it doesn't matter as long as it's big for old Halloween. And yeah, her lover, Twig's lover, is Kaiser Senator Rex Deeplord, an athlete in the running for the Bracer Champagne.
The world is going to shit. The ranking board has come down. People are throwing away their bracers. Factions are forming. Art is being created and thus destroying other things. It's happening. It's all happening.
All right.
We are going to corrupt our fashion tradition, wherein everyone is starting to dress alike based on their faction. And so we're starting to see, instead of individualism, this sort of
tribalism.
Tribalism, exactly, a sectarianism. And that is being very much reflected in the dress and clothing, the fashion that people are wearing. Many people are still trying to wear their old clothes, trying to sort of affect this idea that people are still individuals or a society of individuals, a group of individuals, but these factions are forming and more sectarianism is happening. The downfall continues.
It's a gathering of the apprentice memorialists.
Oh, nice.
Like they're all sitting around maybe like having lunch or something. The iconic skyscraper lunch, but they're up in the big bough of a tree. One of the apprentice memorialists has taken off their bracer and is kind of dressed to indicate a faction that's very kind of anti-bracer. And there's a couple of other people there who are a little more pro-bracer. There's kind of some... So I think that we may be calling on our archetypes, not necessarily their characters.
Twig's there, and then we have sort of secondary characters who are memorialists, apprentice memorialists who are also there.
Maybe the master memorialist is
yes,
kind of the...
Sure, yeah, the master memorialist is there, definitely. A bent old woman still sort of has this beautiful sort of vitality about her face, that she's very joyous. Seems to very much take pleasure in teaching the next generation. Her face at this point is in sort of a frown.
One of the other memorialists, Aether Thwywood Hackwood, he's kind of like standing in the center of a small like huddle of memorialists who are all dressed similar to him. He's got like a wild shock of red hair set up to look like flames with like lights dancing through it. And he's like talking very loudly. You gotta understand, this like realism shit, I'm tired of it. I'm going to start going impressionistic. I don't care what people say.
Master.
You know what? Guys, like, let's just do it. They should look like what we think they look like, these faces.
Master Sapthorn sort of walks over to the apprentice and backhands him across the face.
Master, what are you doing?
This blasphemy. You dishonor our craft. This will not do. Our traditions have stood since we started floating. This is how things are done. You will not speak such words in this place.
What are you talking about? Of course I'm speaking these words, old lady. He signals, and a couple of his fellow like factioneers kind of get up and kind of surround her. And start like...
What, are you all insane? What has gotten into you guys?
What are you talking about?
You're threatening the master. I mean, this doesn't seem like you. Are you just following all these fads?
What are you talking about? Listen, the master is set in her ways, okay? Like, if we're gonna express ourselves, if we're gonna really like take this all the way, can't be tied to this like old-fashioned bullshit. I mean, you of all people know this.
Have you listened to nothing I've taught you? The souls of our people are in the trees. They must make their way out through our craft. They are live forever here.
I mean, even if you aren't into that, It's a part of our history. It's a part of our community and who we are.
That's like your opinion, man. Listen, we don't need to fall into your patterns. That's not how this works. Check this out. And he goes to one of the faces and like slices across it with like a pretty deep gouging tool.
The master's like, no!
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 No, you don't get it. I'm going to go do this to this person and it'll be fully reflective. Isn't that what you want?
You're twisting my teachings. You must leave. You are not welcome here.
Besides, what makes you more important than them?
What makes them more important than our ideas?
Because they're a person, and you should care about other people.
I do. I care about my people.
These are your people. Just because you've started wearing your hair a different way doesn't make you a different person.
I don't know about that.
We're all individuals. We all should explore what makes us beautiful.
That's what I'm getting at.
No. You're exploring the ugliness of factions.
No. Listen, we're all different shades of the same color. Get it?
This
Right,
will
except-
not do.
Would you paint a picture with just one color?
If it was mostly in that tone, it might look pretty cool.
Yeah, that was actually a really bad metaphor. Damn.
I won't allow you to hurt anyone. Woodcutter, woodthwacker.
Maybe it's time that we had more shakers and fewer memorialists.
We all have our part to play in keeping this island floating, It's not all about you and what you want, Aether.
It's not just me. Ask around.
I don't hear anyone else stepping up to support you. They're just standing in the back wearing tastefully color-coordinated outfits.
There are people who agree with the master, sort of rallying around her. People who agree with Woodthwacker, that are rallying around him. And I get the sense Twig is sort of in between these two groups, sort of trying to stop them.
Her bare feet kind of balancing on a thinner section of this branch that, this is like a branch that everyone was sitting down to have lunch on, and now everyone's kind of standing and like kind of getting in position to maybe have a confrontation, and so it's kind of like bouncing a little bit in the wind. Twig says, "Look, none of this is really that important. I'm sure if we just take an afternoon off, Master, and just think about how much we all have in common."
Next, you'll be saying we should do our carvings for gold.
Me? I'm not saying that.
Not saying that to you.
Oh.
She doesn't say that to you, hero. She says that to these shitty people over here who are being mean to her.
If we're carving for gold, I'm fine with that.
No!
Get paid for our work. No more baubles.
No, that is not why we do this.
I think you're right. Maybe we should take the day. Maybe we should just take this all off.
Twig is gonna walk over to the thing that to the face that Aether cut and say, "It's all right to have your own way of seeing somebody, but this is a part of who we all are." And I think she kind of like puts her hands over the cut and just kind of starts like kind of pinching them together, and the wood starts healing back together. And she says, "If you have a problem with that person, you should discuss it with them and not try and make some silly statement."
This guy, Thwackwood or Woodthwacker or whatever,
Aether.
he spits on the ground and storms off, and some of his faction goes with him, but not all of them. And there's a consequence.
Oh, yes, there is.
The healing of the tree, word starts going round that this was done, because normally like memorialists carve, they don't tend to like affect like their take of the tree, really, and like healing or affecting the tree. There's a wives' tale that the person whose face it was starts telling people how, "Oh yeah, no, my face, right around lunchtime, it was just, I fell on the floor. You can ask my husband. It was like my face was on fire, and then I was like cooling, soothing hands. It was just a miracle. I got up and my migraine was gone, all the pain in my face." And so people are attributing, like you're kind of getting a healer cult. They're people who are like coming and lay their locks of hair at your feet where they've shaved their head.
Yes.
You're walking home, and you're walking home with Kaiser. He's actually, you're friends. You're kind of like walking hand in hand. You live on the same branch.
Yeah, we hold hands.
Right? You're going to like your domicile together. And on the way to like as you come to a crossroads, that like sort of a like where there's a multi-branch kind of bow, two factions come tearing at one another. Down the way, and you're cut off from your route
Gang
by
war.
a melee. and it's starting to like spread towards you, and you hear more shouting behind you.
Kaiser, as always, seems very happy to engage in any sort of physical contests, brawling, I guess, with people who come near the pair of you. But you haven't been overtaken yet by these groups. What do you think? You want to stick around or you want to get out of here? Either could be good.
We have to stop this. This is not right. We're all supposed to be working together. And I think Twig is kind of inspired by what she did previously. And as much as she doesn't want to be, is inspired by these people's faith in her, this like weird cult, and has kind of come to think that maybe she does have some sort of powers.
They're going to do what they're going to do. You know, you can't stop them.
And she's going to like raise her hands, and the hair, like moss.
Spanish moss, yeah.
That is just going to come around, and like people who are brawling, it like kind of like cuffs them together.
Wow.
Basically handcuffed together when they're fighting somebody. She goes, "You have to learn to get along and see past your differences. We're all the same. Don't you get that?"
What? No, babe, we're all different. We're all totally different.
Let us go. Stop. Let us go. There's a consequence. The moss, like it's in becoming this active and mobile. Like usually it's pretty pliant and like it's full of sap
Yeah.
that it normally isn't full of. And this sap is highly acidic and starts to dissolve the people who like are trying to break free.
Dissolve them?
Like burn, like
yeah, totally.
burn,
I feel
burn
like
into
this
them.
is the sap that helps in the creation of shake.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's burning through. It's just like this pure,
Yeah, just this
toxic,
pure toxic
like,
sap.
It's also kind of like battery acid.
Yeah, yeah.
Too, because of this like biotech. But
Yeah.
so that's a consequence.
Yes.
Of this like.
People being very badly burned by acid, by chemical acid. Yeah, that's bad news. They look like individuals, though, that's for sure. Let's get out of here. Come on, Twig. Watch out.
We have to help each other. And I think she's going to like run over to the nearest pair and kind of like try and start
No, don't
tearing it
touch
off.
them. You're going to hurt your beautiful face.
Probably her hands get pretty damaged trying to get through it.
Ooh.
And she kind of looks around and like sees that people still aren't like helping each other. They're still trying to fight each other even through
Yeah, in
this.
fact, like some people are taking the strands of stuff.
Oh, and using
and, like,
them.
strangling out other people with it, and like whipping like sprays.
Oh,
of acid
spraying
at one
bad
another.
acid at each other.
And people are starting to now use, because
Mm-hmm.
they see how this worked, like using their own sort of will
Oh, to control.
to draw down more moss and use it as like, so now more moss is descending.
Twig is like so like horrified and overwhelmed by feelings of guilt that she probably kind of grabs a Kaiser Senator Rex Deeplord and runs away.
All right, and the consequence of fleeing, most of the people who were there were killed.
Yeah.
So it's like between like when people come upon this scene, they just see like writhing masses of people like gurgling and screaming and begging for help. And those few who survived, when they're asked what happened, they just say Twig.
And it's so difficult for the memorialists to even carve these people's faces into the
Yeah,
tree.
they can't recognize.
It's hard to
who's who. Some are,
recognize
like,
them.
Like
It's
masses.
totally,
of
yeah, just
limbs.
like puddles of flesh.
Twig has dreams about this, and in her dreams kind of goes back to like the last couple survivors who are begging for help and just kind of whispers, "You see? You need help."
Yeah, reflection.
Definitely people are becoming more and more unreasoning, and kind of definitely people are drinking the Kool-Aid.
The sectarianism.
Yeah,
Kool-Aid.
is really tearing the fabric of society apart. Seeing that maybe the competitions that held society together might have been petty.
Yeah, they weren't deadly.
Yeah, and that fighting over things that really do matter when you're used to fighting in a really competitive way has deadly consequences.
Weaponized Spanish moss.
Yeah, for real. Twig is feeling both guilty for her role in escalating violence, but also, I think because she is still a product of this individualistic society, is feeling like it's both her responsibility and that she's the only person with the power to fix it. So I think maybe she's developing something of a hero complex, and that if people don't listen to her, that's not necessarily her fault.
Hmm.
The bracer champion,
Yep.
the original holder of it was killed by a faction,
Yeah.
and a warlord now wields the Bracer Champeen and is calling himself King of our lands.
Yep.
Of his land.
Of Hisland.
The
Nice.
Hislanders.
The Hislanders. Brutal. I think the scene is pretty clear to me that Twig and Rex Deep Lord as well are at this sort of gathering of people who have sort of shed their bracers or not. They're sort of, it's all folks, but it's the people who really have started to worship Twig as a sort of a healer. It is, in point of fact, another faction. Though this faction sort of is saying that their ethos is about togetherness and bringing everyone underneath their conception of what the traditions are and what they should be. It is positive in that healing happens. And so a lot of this now is Twig literally laying hands on people, that they are brought before her coming from these deadly faction fights, and she heals them. And so that's what's happening right now. It's almost like this sort of faith healing gathering. Kaiser's there. He has brought maybe one of his parents that sort of got hurt in the fighting. And
yeah, I mean, I think too, though, he's like, him and his parent are wearing the colors of the new warlord.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally. Cool. You guys show up in the colors of the new warlord, and you're like, hey, we need to get healed.
Well, even that, they're kind of like, look, you're not the only one with healing powers. I mean, this is kind of, we're just letting you know, you guys should stop doing this.
But this is for the good of everyone.
Is it though? I mean, it's just going to continue the fighting. Like, look, his lands, our lands. At the end of the day, like, if everybody's under the same system, we can go back to being individual people under the same system like we were before.
No. But people won't have the freedom to express themselves the way they need to.
They'll be fine. They'll figure it out. Like, look, you can't hold your breath like for an hour, right? I can't express myself by holding my breath for an hour. I can do it for 5 minutes, and I can do a bunch of different stuff in those 5 minutes. So, living under the warlord is being able to hold my breath for those 5 minutes, and I can do my individual expression in that time frame. It's all. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's what I'm a regular philosopher. That's where I get the name Deep Lord.
Rex, you've changed, but I understand what you're saying.
No, kiddo, you're the one changing. Like this, honestly, everything's kind of as it was. I don't know. Everybody's still brawling here and there, just so they're wearing a lot of the same clothes.
It's this warlord that's the problem. It'll have to be dealt with.
It'll just be another one. Like, you may as well just, get used to this guy. He's not that bad. Plus, he's got some interesting style choices.
Don't you want the Bracer Champeen, Rex?
I'll win it eventually. Like, look again, once things are under control, it'll probably go back to normal. We'll have the whole thing again. The original, look, the dude who had it before, like, he was a good athlete. He earned his place, but he needed to kind of get wise to everything. Everything moves on, Twig.
Not this way. Not this way. Who will carve the faces?
Well, I mean, obviously not you. You're hanging around here, pretending like the fact that you can control nanites is letting you heal people. And like everybody else can do it. If you had these people had their bracers, this wouldn't even be an issue.
I will show you, Rex. I'll show you you're wrong.
All right. I mean, I'm not going to get in your way. You do what you got to do, but
I will. And with that, she sort of calls her people and they start marching towards the warlord's territory.
Twiggy, come on. You're just making trouble for everybody. Be careful.
Quiet, Kaiser.
All right. Look, I'm going to go dive in.
I think the consequence of Twig marching to meet with the warlord and having told in front of some of his supporters, including Deep Lord and family, the warlord knows that she is coming and kind of sets a trap
Ooh.
for her forces.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that Twig really gets hurt, but a lot of the people who are following her definitely do. What happens is in the melee, she is pulled out by her sister. Let's bring her back.
Fantastique.
Fantastique. Still looking pretty bad from having gone through withdrawal from
Shake withdrawal. Yeah.
Having been ravaged by withdrawal from the shake. She kind of pulls her out of the fracas and is kind of like pulled her up above this battle, wants to tell her about a plan that she has.
What are we going to do? I have to get to the warlord and stop him.
Listen, I think that bracer, Champeen, and she's Von Tastique is kind of like holding her bracerless arm. And
Mm.
there's like, and it's not bracerless. She's like cobbled something together from a
Yes.
bunch of other people's bracers.
Yeah, okay.
Like cast off ones.
Yeah.
And her like super colorful hair looks like all matted and disheveled. And she says, I know
Twigs.
what I have to do. And you can come
What's
with
he
me if you
talking about?
want. But I have to get that bracer because I think it controls the island.
That's a great idea. Let's take it away from him.
Right, because one of us, like, we know what's right for this place.
That's right.
We can steer it in the right direction.
That's right.
I mean, this guy kind of had the right idea, you know. If you get one person who knows what they're doing, the rest of these sheeple can just follow. You know,
Well-
and they can feel like they're doing the right thing. They can have their fun. They can have their games. But if I or you get a hold of this, you know, we can make everything better.
But Vaughn, it's not about games. It's about real connections. That's why I never wanted to give hair to anyone. I always wanted to give them something that they could use, something that was real for them.
I mean, it's a cute statement, and it makes you, you know, very individualistic. I appreciate the
I
punk
am not
aesthetic.
cute. And as she says that, she sort of throws her arms forward, and tree limbs also follow her arms as they whip forward, hitting into her sister and knocking her quite far away. It's sort of this just instinctual rebuff.
Yeah, there is definitely a consequence to that. The tree limbs knock her sister back down into the battle, and she is swallowed up in the fight. Her body lands. She doesn't immediately get back up, and she is trampled.
A reflection.
Everything's going to shit. I mean, I feel like we're
nearing
we're
collapse.
basically there. Yeah. I mean, we have different factions fighting amongst each other.
Do we need to have a confrontation with the warlord before we wrap this up?
That could be the part of the collapse. I get the sense that people are starting to tap into their latent abilities to control parts of their world. So they're turning that against
Well,
each other.
Right. So we're going to play, basically, after this reflection, if we say it's collapse, we will play 2 more scenes,
Oh.
and
Yeah.
then we go to the collapse. So it's not,
Yeah.
not over yet.
Yeah, I think we're there. I think we can
Yeah.
do our 2 more scenes.
All right. So where's Twig at?
She's realized that she has to be the positive change that she wants to see in the world, that she can't leave it up to people's better angels. And so the first thing that she has to do is to defeat any rivals. And the warlord is definitely right up there with probably her biggest rival at this point. She's going to defeat her rival. That is her frame of mind now, to save her people.
How's the Haven?
How's the Haven? I think the Haven is burning. I think the Haven is in a state of pretty massive chaos.
The natural one is to do the same one as last time. The warlord is unlocking kind of some of the more potent abilities of the bracer, has made a declaration that if everyone does not bend the knee, he will break the island apart and set those who will not follow him adrift.
Twig is sort of back, like things have, it's like a rest between conflicts right now. And she's with her commanders, battle lines are being drawn, choices are being made. One thing that they've realized is that something in the bracers was inhibiting a latent ability that all of them had to manipulate the biomechanical structure
Yeah.
of their world, of their
Yeah.
tree.
Yep.
So those who don't have bracers and those who have not had them on the longest are able to manipulate
Yeah.
the tree.
And these bracers were like grown from the tree. They like came out. Like we're starting to realize more and more that the tree and the umbrella, the shield, are basically the same thing. They just are
Same material.
Exactly.
Yeah. She's sort of training her people how to like use the tree, manipulate it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's leading an expedition to the shield,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
required they had to fight their way through a couple like small lines to get there, but they're going to try to use their ability against like in the rotted garden and against the shield.
Mm-hmm.
And when they get up there,
There's people waiting for them. Yeah.
well,
No.
there's a person waiting for
A
her.
person.
Standing in the field of faces
Yeah.
is the shattered form, injured and sort of like propped with like branches growing through her of Von Tastique. her sister.
Fantastique!
Fantastic lives!
Fantastic lives!
And she sort of stares down Twig as
Yeah,
Twig
totally.
steps from amongst the ranks of her acolytes and walks towards her sister.
Fantastique says, "This island is no longer big enough for the two of us, dear sister."
You look a total mess. Come on, come. Let me heal you.
No,
you
this is my expression.
Let me
See
use-
my art.
don't use your bracer.
See my art.
You've had your bracer off longer than any of us. You could heal yourself. I could show you.
I must share my art with everyone. And closing her eyes, her sort of cobbled together bracer begins to sort of glow as more of these sort of tree spears start shooting out through the shield, trying to impale her sister's followers and succeeding. Some of Twig's followers are being impaled.
Sister, no. Twig starts to manipulate the rotted wood
Yeah.
things and trying to encase her sister in these.
And it's interesting because the rotted wood, it's almost like arms and legs, like skeletal arms and legs sort of come out the sides and bottoms, almost as if it's like the reanimation of these fallen people. Their busts have been put up here and have been sort of rotting and swelling. It's almost as if they're taking on a life of their own or a consciousness of their own as they're coming around Coloween Chantel Fantastique, who is simply sort of just screaming and shrieking. Lights are flashing, lasers are shooting out, a laser sword that just sort of cuts through some of this wood that's coming at her. She is definitely being borne down by it.
Twig, like, her nose is bleeding as she, like, exerts.
Yeah, there
more
is more of a
pressure.
consequence as well. Exerting the pressure and moving all of these busts unmoors parts of the shield that really had been being sort of threaded together and soldered together by these stumps, their roots continuing to grow underneath the shield and bind the shield even more closely to the tree underneath it. But with all these graveyards, sort of gravestone stumps being pulled out and being used to sort of surround one central place, the shield starts to sort of crack, I guess, and sort of buckle in certain places as just the winds that are blowing all around this place are lashing this place finally sort of start to take an effect on the shield.
She can't quite deliver the final blow.
Yeah.
To her sister. Seeing what's happening to the shield, uses her powers to push away the spikes and pull her people free and start to retreat them away from this area.
Cool. The consequence for retreating is that, again, she's unsure what happens to her sister. I think the last thing she does see is almost like a falling star or a comet, this sort of conglomeration of dark, swollen wood just sort of fall over the side of the shield. I mean, Twig is met by Kaiser, a retinue of warlord warriors. And you guys sort of meet each other on, one of you is fleeing from the shield, the other is sort of heading that way, and you just sort of run into each other as your followers obviously look like they're about to engage in a brawl, if not an outright melee.
Twig steps forward and gives a signal, and she
Raising
actually,
her arms.
and all of her followers, who are bracerless as well,
Yeah.
raise their arms, and does, like, after that she does like a small gesture, and Kaiser is like pushed
Yeah.
by
Almost
ripple
like
of
a
wood
ripple of wood. Yeah.
towards her, and she embraces him as a wall of wood comes up between the two forces.
Yeah, and the warriors of the warlord begin to beat on that wall of wood, trying to climb it or knock it down.
So you want it just one-on-one, huh?
Guys, this is a total mess. You gotta see, like, I don't know what even happened to Fantastique. She lost it. Call is gone. This whole place is just gonna fall apart. The shield is not working. We need to stop the warlord and fix the shield if we want this place to be okay.
Look, the warlord has shown us how to fix things. We can use our bracers. We can all, there's materials I can go gather. Like, I think it's gonna be fine. Like, he knows what he's doing. He's the top dog. And I think that this would all be better if you just remembered that you're a wood carver. Like, you're messing with everything.
It was all going bad before any of the, like, craziness. It was just, Kai, don't you see how dark things have gotten?
I see that a lot of people are forgetting, who they are and what they're good at, and trying to follow you with some sort of. I mean, the person changing the way things are is you.
Yeah, but I'm trying to change it I'm trying to change it from the course of self-destruction. We were all falling off the edge of the world here. Don't you see? Like we have to correct course. We have to come together, not to fight, not to blow each other up or play these games all the time. We have to come together. Kai, don't you see where this all started?
I can see where it's gonna end, though. I mean, there's only one way that you're gonna prove to me and to all the rest of these people that we should listen to you. You're gonna have to prove that you've earned it more than he has.
That's just
The warlord has agreed to have a competition with you, according to the old tradition. You know, if you can beat him, then you're stronger and you deserve it. But if he beats you, you know, we all know what that means. That's a currency that goes back before idols and flotsam. You know, we all know what that means.
Kai, that way just leads us back to where we were. And she makes like a part in the wall and pushes him back through it and turns her back and walks back through her acolytes away from Kaiser and the war.
Cool.
So now we go to the collapse.
Let's.
Is there a consequence to any of this?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
I mean,
no.
the collapse of our society
The
is
collapse of society.
How
it
about
seems
the
like
imminent collapse of society for 800, please?
Purge Planet.
Each player gets to narrate a short final moment as the Haven collapses. If we haven't seen the Haven collapse yet, this is the time to describe its final destruction. At this point, the hero is allowed to die if we want.
The first thing we see is ground level. Twig finally confronted by the warlord, a circle of the warlord's forces, and actually her own forces, kind of forcing them into a one-on-one. They square off. At a point during the fight, the warlord slams his bracer down into the ground and just a crack appears.
Oh.
And it starts to rapidly widen. People jump from
Bracer
the,
Champagne.
the bracer champagne breaks the island apart. We see it kind of drifting apart. People are trying to jump to one side or the other, and Twig like starts trying to use her powers to get the roots of the tree to like hold it together. And some of her followers are helping her, but most of them are focused on getting themselves to safety.
Twig is very focused on this, so much so that she is spread-eagled in the air, like trying to bring these roots sort of to her and to each other. She does see, however, the sort of smoking, charred remains of a conglomeration of cemetery stumps. What remained of her sister, it seems as if a large sort of like floating pile of debris is moving away from the collapsing aisle. And she gets the sense that maybe her sister has survived this to live another day. And wood starts to then encase her limbs as she is just using her body to draw all of the island back together. Even as like limbs are falling off, like the tree, it's almost like shaking, like it's in a hurricane, like things are being ripped off. It is falling apart.
The wood is like almost covering Twig's
Yeah.
face, and she's feeling this pressure. Her limbs are like getting mashed to a pulp.
Yes.
As the momentum of the
She's, like,
tree
screaming in pain.
is twisting her, and she sees almost like a dark mockery of what she is. Her own sister emerges from the water, like covered in rotted faces. And smiles and says, "Time to shake it up, sister." And that's when there's an explosion. And that's the last thing that just white and flame. And that's the last thing that Twig sees. The haven has fallen, brought low by the very flaw that once made it great. Our hero's futile task is complete. Perhaps one day we can salvage something from the ruins of our former home. Perhaps not. Probably not.
Probably not.
With that, our story ends. We will return again with a new tale to spin to dare to entertain. I want to jump in here and let you know that we have started a Patreon page for Board Ghost, where if you love the show or like it enough, we would love if you go there and see if you're up for supporting us. Any little bit helps. You can find the link through boardghost.com, and you can go look for the Board Ghost page on Patreon. And I'm starting a new podcast called Wound and Stab on October 23rd. Me and my co-host Taylor Smurl. It's a book club podcast where we ask our listeners to read along with us. So that's woundandstab.com, and it's going to launch on October 23rd. I was one of your players, John Holt. You can find me on Instagram at board_ghost and on Twitter at Lord Joho. You can find my other podcast at newtoyoushow.com. Ken, where can people find you?
You can find me, Ken Breeze, at Berlingsbeard, Berlings, Beard, all over the interweb. Find me on Twitter, on Instagram, and I'm also on Twitch and YouTube doing D&D on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Check it out.
All right. And Liza, where can people find you? Out in the real world?
Out in the real world. I'm a ghost on the internet.
To learn more about the players and the engine in our story, please visit boardghost.com. You can attempt to pierce the veil and contact us at BoardGhostWorld on Twitter. Shout out through the ether if you have desires we can fulfill. Please leave reviews and comments on iTunes, your preferred listening portal, and take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest episodes. We'd like to thank Pat Couples for our theme song and interlude music. You can find more about Pat at patcouples.tumblr.com or on his band's website, hotelsandhighways.com. If you're not alone in the void, share our stories. The more they are consumed, the truer they become.
Dying, don't agree with me.